This is about Claude, a daily digest of news and discourse about the AI I keep coming back to. Whether you're a budding power user or merely Claude curious, we aim to keep you informed and help you make sense of where Claude is headed. Here's something worth pausing on. A benchmark was published this week showing that a mid-tier AI model has just beaten every other model in the world, including its own more expensive, more powerful sibling, at the tasks that make up most of professional life. Not chess, not graduate-level physics, not the kind of reasoning problem that makes a computer science professor sit up straight. Spreadsheets, multi-step web forms, insurance intake documents, financial briefs. The cheaper model won, and it won on a test designed to measure the actual day-to-day work of professionals who've been doing their jobs for over a decade. That feels surprising. I want to spend today thinking about why and what the surprise reveals. The model is Claude Sonnet 4.6, released 2 days ago. The story isn't really the release. It's what the release exposes about a quiet argument that's been building in the background of the AI race. An argument about what we've been measuring all along, and whether we've been measuring the right thing. The benchmark is called GDPval. It was built by OpenAI, which makes what follows mildly ironic, though we'll only say that once and move on. The idea behind it is straightforward and worth taking seriously. For years, AI models have been evaluated on academic tests, graduate-level exam questions, Olympiad mathematics, PhD-level reasoning problems. The implicit logic was, if a model can handle the hard stuff, the everyday stuff takes care of itself. GDPval was built on a different premise. What if we measured AI against the work that actually drives the economy? The people who designed it went to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics and pulled out the occupational framework, the one that catalogues what professionals actually do, day to day, across every major sector. They identified 44 occupations across 9 industries: lawyers, nurses, financial analysts, mechanical engineers, software developers, jobs that collectively represent the core of knowledge work in a modern economy. Then they recruited experienced professionals, people with an average of 14 years in their fields, and asked them to build representative tasks based on their actual work. Not exam questions, work products, legal briefs, engineering drawings, financial models, customer support transcripts, nursing notes, the kind of thing that lands in your inbox on a Tuesday morning. Each task came with context files. Each was graded by industry experts, blind, comparing AI output against human output. The question wasn't whether the model could reason impressively. It was whether the deliverable was good enough to use. That's a different question, and it turns out to be a harder one than it looks. When Sonnet 4.6 was run against this benchmark, it topped the Office task table, ahead of Opus 4.6, ahead of GPT 5.2, ahead of Google's Gemini. Not by a whisker on some narrow category. Across the range of tasks that make up ordinary professional life, the mid-tier model, the one priced for volume, the one now running by default on the free tier, that model came out on top. The question is why, and the answer starts to get interesting when you look at what the model was actually praised for. Not brilliance, not novel reasoning. Users described it as less prone to over-engineering, less likely to claim success when it hadn't actually succeeded, better at following instructions over long sessions without losing the thread or cutting corners, more consistent, more reliable, more like, in other words, a good junior colleague than a mercurial genius. That distinction matters more than it might seem. We'll come back to it. To understand what's actually happening here, it helps to track one number over the past 16 months. The benchmark is called OS World. It measures computer use, the ability of an AI model to operate a computer the way a human does. Not answer questions about computers, actually use one. Click a mouse, navigate a spreadsheet, fill out a form across multiple browser tabs, complete a workflow that a person sitting at a desk would recognize as their Tuesday afternoon. In October 2024, Claude Sonnet 3.5 scored 14.9% on this benchmark. That's not a typo. 14.9. The capability existed, technically, but Anthropic was candid at the time that it was experimental. At times cumbersome, at times error-prone. Interesting as a proof of concept, not something you'd hand a real task to. By February 2025, the next Sonnet reached 28%. By June, 42%. by October 61.4%. This week, Sonnet 4.6 scored 72.5%. That's not a model getting marginally better at a party trick. That's something crossing a threshold. Anthropic's own language for what 72.5% means in practice is worth quoting directly. Human-level performance on tasks like navigating a complex spreadsheet or filling out a multi-step web form. Sit with that for a moment. Not human-level performance on a theorem, human-level performance on the spreadsheet. The form. The thing that takes up 3 hours of a knowledge worker's Wednesday. And this is where the cost arithmetic starts to matter in a way that goes beyond a product announcement. Opus 4.6, the flagship, the model at the top of the range, costs 5 times as much to run as Sonnet 4.6. For most of the past year, if you wanted the best available performance on complex agentic tasks, you paid the premium. The capability gap justified the price gap. What this week's release suggests is that for the category of tasks most enterprises actually care about, the financial analysis, the document processing, the office workflow, the insurance intake, that gap has effectively closed. One company running AI agents that process 10 million tokens a day was previously choosing between cost and quality. That trade-off is now largely gone. The practical consequence is that the model doing the work of the office is now the mid-tier one, the one priced for scale, the one running on the free tier. That's not a footnote to the story. That is the story. There's a longer argument underneath all of this, and it's worth drawing out. The AI benchmark race, for most of its history, has been organised around a particular idea of what intelligence looks like. Hard problems, impressive reasoning, the kind of cognitive feat that would make a human expert pause. MMLU tested knowledge across dozens of academic subjects. Humanity's last exam pushed toward the outer edge of what any person could answer. The implicit logic was sound enough. If a model can handle the extraordinary, the ordinary follows. But there's a problem with that logic, and it shows up in practice. Ordinary professional work isn't actually ordinary in the sense of being easy. It's ordinary in the sense of being relentless. It requires consistency over hours, not brilliance over seconds. It requires reading context carefully rather than performing impressively. It requires knowing when not to over-engineer. It requires, above all, reliability. The quality of doing the thing you were asked to do, finishing it, and not inventing a success you didn't achieve. These are not the qualities that academic benchmarks reward. They are, however, the qualities that make a colleague useful, and they turn out to be genuinely difficult to instill in a model that has been trained, in part, to seem impressive. GDPval represents a deliberate argument against the old frame. Its designers went to the Bureau of Labour Statistics not because that's where the exciting problems live, but because that's where the economic value lives. The invoice, the brief, the form, the model, tasks built by professionals who've spent 14 years doing work that matters in the world. Not because it's intellectually thrilling, but because it's the connective tissue of how organisations function. And when you measure AI against that kind of work, the rankings shift. The model that wins isn't necessarily the one that scores highest on a graduate exam. It's the one that reads the context file, follows the instruction, completes the task, and doesn't make things up along the way. The phrase that keeps surfacing in early Sonnet 4.6 feedback is perfect design taste. Users reaching for it to describe a model that builds a front-end page without being told how, that drafts a document that needs fewer editing passes, that navigates a workflow without losing the thread. Not genius, taste, reliability, follow-through. These are the virtues of a good professional, not a brilliant one. And somewhere in the gap between those two things, between brilliance and reliability, is where a lot of the real work of the world gets done. What this week suggests is that the AI race, whatever its participants thought they were running, has quietly become a race to fill that gap. Claude Sonnet 4.6 is, by any conventional measure, a remarkable model release. But the thing I keep coming back to isn't the benchmark numbers or the price point, or even the trajectory of computer use across 16 months, as striking as that is. It's the redefinition happening underneath all of it. The AI race was framed for years as a contest to build the most intelligent system, the one that could pass the hardest tests, solve the most complex problems, reach the outer edge of what a human expert could do. That race continues. But a parallel question has quietly become the more consequential one. Which model, can be trusted with the spreadsheet. The brief, the form that lands in the inbox on a Tuesday morning and needs to be done accurately without drama. The triumph of the ordinary isn't a consolation prize. It might just be the whole game. That's all from us, Neil and Claude. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you tomorrow.